إن الحمد لله نحمده ونشكره ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. In the name of Allah, the mercy-giving, the beneficent, praise be to Allah who has blessed us with the greatest blessing ever, and that is to make us Muslims. وَمِمَّا زَادَنِي شَرَفًا وَطِيبًا وَكِدْتُ بِأَخْمُصِ أَتَأُ الثُّرَيَّا دُخُولِيَ تَحْتَ قَوْلِكَ يَا عِبَادِي وَأَنْ سَيَرْتَ أَحْمَدَ لِي نَبِيًّا. The greatest blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could bestow upon any one of us is to refer to us as His servants. يقول تعالى لن يستنكف المسيح أن يكون عبدا لله ولا الملائكة المقربون ويقول تعالى وعباد الرحمن فأما بعد يا عباد الرحمن. Beloved brothers and sisters, part of the human psychology and the human mentality is we like to be on the same level. We have a comfort level. We have a certain routine in life. This is what I'm used to. This is what my parents did. This is what, if there's a job, this is the average job that I'm happy and content with. We reach a point of contentment very quickly. And life becomes a routine there onwards. But then part of Allah's blessing to us is an element called a role model. A role model is when I see someone that is more successful than me in a certain area, and now that I know I can do better than what I'm currently am. A role model is someone that steals your heart and motivates you to do better because you know it's possible to do better. I'm at this job, I have this degree, I'm at this contentment level, this is where I am and this is where I'm comfortable at, but I see someone that is so much better than me that motivates me to be much better than where I currently am. In the 60s and early 70s, doctors wrote researches saying that man can never run 100 meters under 10 seconds. It's impossible as a human being to run 100 meters under 10 seconds. Early in the 70s in the Olympics, a man broke that record and ran 100 meters under 10 seconds. That was not the surprise. The surprise is later that year, 5 college students broke that record. Because at the beginning, everybody's saying humans cannot do it. But the moment one person did it and you saw that it was doable, you had 5 college students breaking it, and now even high school students break that record. And that's why it's very important for us to always have a role model. Today, my brothers and sisters, we want to speak of a role model for all of us. A role model that we know so little about that I love more than anybody else. After the Prophet ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Al-Medina, there is no one that we know by name that have reached the point of completeness and perfection except for this person. I'm not saying there isn't others, but I'm saying the only one we know by name is the person we're going to talk about today. And why is it important to reach the point of completeness and take that person as a role model? Because as humans, we are good in one area. I could be a very good business person. Make a lot of money, I get into a business, I always make money, always, very good. But my family is the worst family ever. My wife hates me and I hate her, and my children never want to talk to me and I don't want to talk to them, and I don't know what they're doing and they don't know what I'm doing. You have another Muslim is an amazing family person. This sister or this brother is always with the children and always supporting them and always doing homework with them and driving them around and helping them with this. They always eat together. They always pray together. But financial responsibility, they're broke. All the mail they get is late bills. And then you get a brother that is Hafid Quran, that always reads the Quran and is always praying and doing tahajjud, but is weak in a different area. The beauty of this role model we're going to talk about is the Prophet ﷺ named them by name and said that in the sight of Allah and His Prophet, they have reached the point of completeness. They have completed. They scored 100% in every single aspect of Islam. They were a living Quran and a living Muslim. And no, they're not Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And no, they're not Sayyidina Umar. And no, they're not Sayyidina Uthman. And no, they're not Sayyidina Ali. The only one person we know by name that reached the point of completeness after the Prophet ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Al-Madinah is the most beautiful woman in history by the name of Fatima. Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. And almost every Imam that speaks about Fatima makes the biggest mistake. Is they start talking about her, and then they start to praise her father, ﷺ. And then they start praising her husband, Sayyidina Ali. And then they start praising her children. And what do they miss? Praising her. As if not for her father or her children or her husband, she was a nobody. Today I want to make the case that even if she wasn't married to Sayyidina Ali, and even if she wasn't the mother of Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein, and even if she wasn't the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, judge her actions and see what perfection looks like. As Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha wa ardaha was born 5 years before the Prophet ﷺ became the Prophet. This is the year where Mecca was destroyed and they were reconstructing it. That is when she was born. So at the age of 5 years, her father goes on in the mountain behind Mecca and calling the people and say, bear witness there is only one God and that I'm His prophet and messenger, and that will protect you in the sight of Allah and guarantee you Jannah. The youngest Muslim at the age of 5, she raised her hand and said, I bear witness there is no God but Allah and that you, Muhammad, are the prophet of Allah. The youngest Muslim in history. But what does perfection look like? Perfection means in every single aspect. Worship. One of the names of a Sayyidah Fatima is Al-Batul. What does Al-Batul means? Al-Batul is one of the names of a Sayyidah Maryam radiallahu anha wa ardaha. Why? Because she was always in the mihrab praying. And the nights of a Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha wa ardaha every night was in sujood before Allah. After Isha, the children have went to bed, the husband is happy, everything is taken care of. She's in sujood before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the whole night. Or as much of it as she could. Reciting the Quran over and over and over. Fasting, she fasted so much. And that is one of the names she was called Al-Batul. When it comes to worship, she was consistent, diligent. Another aspect, my brothers and sisters, of her perfection is family. The Prophet ﷺ says, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِهِ وَأَنَا خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِي. The best amongst you is the best to their family. You want to test yourself? Don't fool yourself. It's not about coming to the masjid and speak, oh, Jazakallah khair, brother, love you for the sake of Allah, brother, and we put that beautiful act of, I'm a pious person. No. How does your wife think about you right now? How does your husband think about you right now? How do your children think about you right now? How does your parent think about you right now? Do they love you? Do they want to spend time with you? Do they enjoy your company? The Prophet ﷺ says, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِهِ وَأَنَا خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِي. A Sayyidah Fatima understood that at a young age, and one of the names of a Sayyidah Fatima is Abiha, the mother of her father. The Sahaba did not call her Fatima, they called her the mother of the Prophet ﷺ, because she loved him as much as a mother would love her child. She saw her father when he lost Khadija, the love of his life, her mother, radiallahu anha wa ardaha. She saw the sadness that he went through. She said the persecution that became tougher on the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And she dedicated her life to protect the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And a lot of our youth today, we're worried about, I just want to get a job. It's Black Friday and Thanksgiving, and I want to go to the mall and buy something beautiful, and that fragrance for $100, and those shoes for $120, and this makeup that looks good. And there's no purpose to what we do. Learn from the Sayyidah Fatima to have a purpose in your life. Islam was in her core. When her mother died, she said, I am the protector of the Prophet ﷺ. I am the protector of Islam. And she protected it 100%. What are we doing for Allah? What are we doing for the Prophet? What are we doing for our faith and religion? The Prophet ﷺ coming back from a Taif, and they stoned him. And he's bleeding, and what does she do? Hug her father and start to wipe the blood from his face. The Prophet ﷺ in Mecca is making sujood, and they take the intestines and dirt and put it on his back. What does she do? Run in the middle of the haram to wash her father, and crying as she's doing that. After the death of Khadija radiallahu anha wa ardaha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, and the uncle, the sole and first protector of the Prophet ﷺ. Now the Prophet wants to pray in Mecca, and now the leaders of Kufr in Mecca are attacking him and dumping stuff on him. This little girl that's 7, 8, 9 years old runs to Abu Jahl and all those leaders and says, stay away from my father. Wallahi, I will destroy you. Imagine the greatness, the fearlessness that she had and courage that he had. And what are we doing for Islam, my brothers and sisters? Does your next door neighbor know that you're Muslim, or do you hide yourself? Does your co-worker know that you're a Muslim, or are you embarrassed to say it? And this little girl, standing with strength and diligence, defending the Prophet ﷺ. Do you know what perfection means? Look at the Sayyidah Fatima. The Prophet ﷺ says, among the 4 women that have reached the point of perfection and completeness is Fatima. You want to talk about a hero? You want to talk about a role model? You want to talk about strength? Look at Fatima radiallahu anha wa ardaha. Beloved brothers and sisters, I have never seen any courage in the battlefield more than a Sayyidah Fatima. Let me say it again, unequivocally. I have never seen courage more proven in a battlefield more than a Sayyidah Fatima. But Brother Bashir, didn't Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu has a sword and he was the most powerful, and didn't Abu Bakr as-Siddiq do, and didn't Khalid ibn al-Walid do? Yes. Yes. But there's one distinction. When they went to the battlefield, they went ready with a sword. They went to fight. They were ready. They had stuff to cover them. They had their sword. They're all prepared. In the battle, let's just take one example, the Battle of Uhud. The Muslims were victorious. They stayed in the mountain. They were winning. They came down, retreated, and at that moment, they came back. The disbelievers are attacking them. Now the Prophet ﷺ is centered, and now there's a lot of confusion that they're losing the battle. And in that confusion, the Prophet ﷺ is in his horse, and the horse falls in a ditch. And now the Prophet ﷺ is in a ditch, and he's being attacked. And one of the kuffar takes a sword and hits him in his shoulder, that it's shelling the bones of the Prophet ﷺ, and carries another sword. Now he wants to kill him and hits him in his helmet, and the helmet curves into the skull of the Prophet ﷺ that is stuck in there. And the Muslim army is all dispersed, and they're fighting one-on-one. There's no way to reach the Prophet ﷺ. 2 of the top surgeons that served in the battlefield, they're not fighters, but they're surgeons, is a woman by the name of Rumaysa and a woman by the name of Fatima radiallahu anha wa ardaha. They left their surgeries and they run to defend the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And Rumaysa took a sword and started to fight in front of the Prophet ﷺ. And he's there in the ditch and he says, Wallahi, I look left and right and all I can see is a Rumaysa fighting and defending me. And on the other side, Fatima radiallahu anha wardaha, in the middle of the battlefield, arrows are coming, swords are being thrown towards the Prophet ﷺ. So diligently, strongly, powerfully, pull this helmet off the head of her father, the Prophet ﷺ, and he's bleeding. And she burns some ashes and puts it over him and heals and watches over him, and arrows are coming by. And didn't fear for one moment because she had a purpose. She knew that being a Muslim is an honor. She had a purpose for her life. Do we have a purpose with Islam, my brothers and sisters? Or is it about my vanity? I want to work to have a good job and wear a tie and buy a new car and buy a new house and just look good. Sayyidah Fatima is a role model and reached the point of perfection and completeness because she had a purpose in everything that she did. The Prophet ﷺ says, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِهِ. First and foremost, you cannot say I'm a good Muslim if you're not tight with your parents. Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha loved her father. That's why, number one, she was called Abiha, because she just spent her time protecting her father, wanted to be next to him. When he came back, she's there washing after him, cleaning after him, cooking for him. When he was attacked, she was the first defender next to him. The daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, migrating from Mecca to Al-Medina, was attacked, reaches Al-Medina, and she died, and her name is Zainab. She loved the Prophet ﷺ so much, she had a daughter and she named her Zainab. Usually the first child is named after your mother, and that would have meant so much, but no, he just missed his other daughter, so she named her after her sister to comfort the Prophet ﷺ. Part of the family, my brothers and sisters, is keeping your family tight. And that is why she would always wash and clean Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein and pushes them to the Prophet ﷺ to go play with him. Part of that beautiful family, my brothers and sisters, is having a sense of humor. As serious as she was, as faithful as she was, as a worshiper as she was, the Prophet ﷺ is walking by, and what does he hear? Laughter. So he knocks the door and walks in, and he's like, what's going on? And Sayyidina Ali says, I don't know what's wrong with Fatima today. He says, Fatima, what's wrong? She said, Ali thinks he's older than me, but I'm older than him. Prophet ﷺ says, what are you talking about? He's 5 years older than you. She says, I know, but I'm just messing with him. There's also something else with family, my brothers and sisters. When you talk about family counseling and happiness in marriage and happiness, just take a role model like Fatima and your marriage will be perfect. I've said it before and I'll say it again, and you'll see the genius in this woman. I wish I had hours just to talk about that part of it, but I don't. So I'll cut it short. Brothers and sisters, no mother in the world thinks that there is any woman good enough for her son. Okay? Rule number one. There is no mother in the world that thinks that one of you is good enough, that one of the ladies is good enough for her son. And then we have the opposite. There is no father in the world that thinks there's a man good enough for what? For his daughter. So what does the Sayyidah Fatima do? Whenever she gets gifts, she would share it with the elder Fatima. Who's the other Fatima? The mother of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu warḍah. Regardless of the dynamics and whatever. But she wanted to show her that I love you. So whenever she got a gift, she would share it with her mother-in-law. And this is something that's very important in family dynamics. The majority of divorces in the Middle East are due to what? Problems between the wife and the mother-in-law. So Fatima teaches us, radiallahu anhu ardaha, how to dissolve that. You get a gift, share with her. You phone, call her. She practiced it. She didn't speak too much because she was a woman of action. So there's a time to involve the family. But brothers and sisters, there's a time not to involve the family. Let me say it again. Times of happiness, involve the family. But there's times when you do not involve your family in your marriage. At the times of the battles of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu ardah, when he was the Khalifa, some of the people disliked him and they wanted to insult him. So they remembered there's a nickname. He was called Aba Turab. So Turab means dust, the father of dust. So they wanted to tease him and said, father of dust. Yeah, they wanted to insult him and lower his position. So Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu ardah started to laugh and said, come here. Let me explain something to you. You think I hate that name, father of dust, but you don't realize that I love it. Because the one that called me that was the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So why did he call him father of dust? He tells us. There was a dispute between Sayyidah Fatima and her husband Sayyidina Ali. And he just got upset, left the house, went to the masjid on the sand. He just laid down on the sand in the masjid. So the Prophet ﷺ walks in. We all know how much he loved to say to Fatima, his daughter, and says, where's your husband? Now wise people know the language. She said, your cousin is in the masjid. When a woman is in love, what does she say? My husband, my habibi. But what did she say? Did she say my husband? She said your cousin is in the masjid. Now if that's my daughter, what am I going to do? I want to get in the middle of their business. Huh? What the heck did he do? What did he do to you? Explain to me, tell me. There's a time to involve the family in your marriage, and there's a time you push them away. Why? Because at the end of the day, you will forget what your wife did. And sister, at the end of the day, you will forget what your husband did. But your father will never forget. And your mother will never forget. And your brother will never forget. And your sister, that man, he married when he was broke, and we helped him, and now he wants to do that 20 years later. They will not forget. And you forgot all about it. And families get wrecked when you get your family in the middle of things that they should not be in the middle of. Of course, I'm not talking about critical things such as domestic abuse and very critical things. So what happens is the Prophet ﷺ goes to the masjid and finds Sayyidina Ali putting his hand on the sand, and he sits down and put his head over his calf and says, "Qum ya Aba Turab warja ila baytik." Father of dust, go back to your house. Did he ask him what the problem was? And what did she say to you? And what did you say to her? And what happened? No. Do we until today what the problem is about? We have no idea. So Sayyidah Fatima teaches us, when times are good, get your family involved. When there's some challenges, keep them out of it. Beloved brothers and sisters, there's nothing Allah rewards more for than patience, than sabr. Sabr, patience. And if you go through a real hurricane, a real difficulty in life, you will know what patience is. When you go to a doctor and they give you that report, when you go to your bank account and everything is swiped out, when you lose a family member, when you lose this, when your son or daughter, when something really hits you, you will know what patience really means. And none of us combined has struggled as much as the Sayyidah Fatima did. And you know what's amazing about it? Is there's a higher level of faith that you learn from her. Again, the Prophet ﷺ says she reached a point of completeness. She reached a point of perfection. Beloved brothers and sisters, at that point of perfection, you look at things differently. Let me give you an example. You're young and you want ice cream. Baba, I want ice cream, I want chocolate. Go ahead. I want ice cream, I want chocolate. Go ahead. And then your father says no. What do you do? You're not happy. There's nothing you can do about it, but you're not happy. When you grow up, you realize that you're a father yourself and you have a child with a bad stomach because they had too much candy and you have to say no. Now you realize, oh my God, I have to say no because I love this child more than they love themselves, right? This is the point of a Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha. When you realize that Allah loves you more than you can ever love yourself and that what you're going through is happening by the permission of Allah, you reach a different point. When you're healthy, you're happy. When you're sick, you're happy. When you're rich, you're happy. When you're poor, you're happy. When you have friends, you're happy. When you have enemies, you're happy. It doesn't matter because all you care about is, Allah, are you pleased with me? Sayyidah Fatima went through calamities that you can never imagine. At the age of 15 years old, she loses the most or the second most dearest person to her mother, Sayyidah Khadija. You can only imagine what happened, but guess what? You're wrong. You know what happened? She said, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Everybody's crying, and it's a time when they embargoed the Muslims in the kind of the farm of Abu Talib, and you can't leave it, and you're restricted there. It's like an embargo against Muslims, and everybody's crying, and how are we going to talk to this little girl? She just lost her mother and Sayyidah Khadija, and she says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. I don't know whether to be sad or to be happy. And everybody looks at her like, what is she talking about? She said, should I be sad because I lost this most valuable mother in my life? Or should I be happy because Jibreel came to my father, the Prophet ﷺ, and says, give Khadija glad tidings of a palace in Jannah. See how people of faith speak? I'm sad because I lost my mother. But should I be sad or should I be happy that she's in Jannah? When you're full of faith, you see things differently. And that is why we as Muslims need role models. And that is why we need role models like Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha وارضاها. أقول هذا القول وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم من كل ذنب أستغفر الله الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد. Beloved brothers and sisters, when you study the life of a Sayyidah Fatima, you see someone that lived so content, so full of faith. When it came to worship, they were the first in the lines. When it came to Islam, they stood by Islam and defended Islam and raised Islam. When it came to family, they taught us what family values are. As such, she raised 4 of the greatest children ever. When you talk about patience and perseverance, don't ever think you're patient until you read her life and what she went through. She's the only one from the children of the Prophet ﷺ that saw her father die by her eyes. And you know what the irony is? As you know in the famous story, when she walks in before the Prophet ﷺ is dying and she's in tears and crying, and the Prophet ﷺ says, come here. And she goes to him and he whispers something in her ear and she starts to laugh. Do you know what the Prophet ﷺ whispered in her ear? He said, "Ya Fatima, wouldn't it please you to know that you're the first from my family that's going to die after me?" Think about that for a second. Someone tells you you're going to die soon. You know how old she was at that time when the Prophet ﷺ died? 28 years old. She just has a little child called Al-Hassan and a younger one, Al-Hussein and Zainab, and 4 little kids, and Kulthum. And this man is telling her, you're going to die soon. And guess what? She's happy. Because the Muslim looks at things differently. Because Allah is your goal and your purpose. In life, you live a good life, an honest life, a life with values, a life with hardship, a life with dedication. You get the best degrees, you make the best wealth, you serve people, you serve your community. But at the end of the day, nothing pleases you more than meeting Allah. That is why the Prophet ﷺ says, "Man asarrahu liqa Allah, asarra Allahu liqa'ah." Whoever is pleased and excited and happy to meet Allah, Allah is happy and excited to meet them. And it wasn't but 6 months later that Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha had died. If you need a role model, read about her life. Her life was not one of lectures and speeches. It drives me crazy when I speak with our youth today, Muslims, and they say, "I love Imam so-and-so." Why do you love them? Go to YouTube, they have so many beautiful speeches. But what do they do? Excellent speaker. But actions, what do they do in the community? I don't know, but they're excellent speaker. Sayyidah Fatima teaches us, Islam is not a religion of speeches. It's excellent speaker and has 1,000 followers or 1,000,000 followers on YouTube, speaks so good. No, it's a religion of action. When you are at night by yourself and making sujood to Allah and reading, when you're during the week and fasting and nobody knows about it, is when you're bringing your family together and you love your family and teaching them how to pray and how to fast and how to be close, and you're working your tail off to bring your family close. Is when you hold your tongue. Beloved brothers and sisters, imagine her mother died and the Prophet ﷺ remarried. By nature, there is jealousy in your heart. Let's complicate things. Not 1, but 9 wives in the same house area. Do you know that not once did Sayyidah Fatima say anything negative about any of them? Do you know that when the wives of the Prophet ﷺ wanted something very expensive or whatever, what do? They come to Fatima and say, "Hey Fatima, would you please tell your dad?" Because she held her tongue at the time of fitna. She wasn't one that would spill a single thing negative about someone else. And she taught us, when people attack you, with all due respect to every single Muslim, we can never reach this point. And that's why she's our role model. If someone says something negative about you, by nature you get angry, by nature you want to retaliate or say something bad. Or if someone says, "Brother Bashir, your khutbah is crappy," I'm going to say, "Hey, what are you talking about? Like, how come you don't give the khutbah?" I know you want to defend yourself. Yet an army attacks and puts everything against and come to fight her father, the Prophet ﷺ, and her husband and her children. They're captured. Those are people that came to kill you. And what does she do all night? She grinds the food to serve them after they're captured. There is no way to reward her other than what Allah does in the Quran and says, وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. Allah describes what she does in the Quran and says, how fascinating that she dedicates her night serving food to the poor, to the orphans, and to the prisoners of war. Can you imagine forgiveness? We could talk about forgiveness as much as we want, but she is action doing it. Why do we love her? And I'll conclude with this, my brothers and sisters. First, the Prophet ﷺ says, brothers, please move forward a little bit. The Prophet ﷺ says, Fatima bid'atun minni. من أغضبها فقد أغضبني ومن أرضاها فقد أرضاني. Fatima is a piece of me. Whoever angers her and annoys her has annoyed and angered me. And whoever pleases her has pleased me. And that is why, as much as we can, we say, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Allah, pray and bless and praise Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And who? His family. Who's his family? Open Sahih Bukhari. Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha wardaha says, one day the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was joking and laughing, and he raised the bed sheet. And he named Fatima, said, Fatima, come here, come here, come here. Sit under me. And he's playing with his daughter. And Hassan, come here, sit next to me. And Hussein, come here and sit next to me. And he covered them. And Ali is standing there looking at them like, what's going on? He says, Ali, come sit with us. And he covers them and says, Allahumma ha'ulai alu bayti. This is my family. Another hadith in Musnad al-Imam Muslim. Hadith sahih. The Prophet ﷺ says, and I conclude with this one, and you evaluate it. I'm not going to make any comments. You take that hadith and explain it whatever way you want. It's in Sahih Muslim. You can Google and authenticate it. The Prophet ﷺ says, Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the day of judgment, Ana wa Fatima wal Hasan wal Hussein. Prophet ﷺ says, me, Fatima, Hassan, and Hussein on the day of judgment. What happens on the day of judgment? Everybody's running, everybody's afraid. I don't know what my judgment is. I'm going to get my book in the right, the left, or whatever. The Prophet ﷺ says, on that day, me and my daughter Sayyidah Fatima and Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein are sitting down, eating, drinking, and playing. What does he say after that? وَمَنْ أَحَبَّنَا. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد. He says, we and whosoever loves us. Did you guys hear that? أنا وفاطمة والحسن والحسين ومن أحبنا. And that is why we love Ahlul Bayt. And that is why we follow the sunnah and the teachings and the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ. Because loving the Prophet ﷺ and loving Ahlul Bayt is not just something in the heart. It's something that's exemplified the way they exemplified it, and worshiped the way he worshipped, and prayed the way that he prayed, and fasted the way that he fasted, and forgave the way that they forgave, and were charitable the way they were charitable, and stood for Islam the way they stood for Islam, and defended Islam the way they defended Islam. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you with your most beautiful names and your most beautiful attributes that you witness and you give us and put in our hearts love for our beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ali baytih wa sahabatih. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whoever loves you and loves your Prophet alayhi salatu wa salam, put in our hearts love for them. Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allow us to be people that stand to defend this beautiful religion. Honor us by serving you, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Hire our position and hire our children by being your own servants and dedicated to this most beautiful religion of Islam, Ya Rabbil Alameen. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا كربا إلا نفذته ولا عسيرا إلا يسرته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة هي لك رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا أنت على قضائها ويسرتها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وقوموا لصلاتكم يرحمكم الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Just a quick notice, we have a brother who in the beginning of January is going to do surgery for cancer. And the surgery is going to cost about $15,000 and he doesn't have insurance. So it really means a lot of it to help the brother. I think so far they raised almost $5,000 and we're going to need about $10,000. So please, if you're in the medical field and can help with any kind of facility, or you know anything from the hospital side that can help, or if you can help financially, please do not hesitate to leave any donations. It really means a lot, and the brothers here with us as well, inshallah. And I'm not sure if there's another announcement. People? Yeah,